Okay, in your notes, please go ahead and get your notes out. So you're going to be setting up a MIDI track. But the real kicker here is that even though we call it MIDI, there's two types of MIDI tracks. The one we're going to do today is a MIDI instrument track. Okay, so setting up a MIDI track via instrument. All right, so essentially it'll be an instrument track. I'll show you how to do it. We can set up MIDI using a MIDI track, but on Pro Tools, MIDI tracks are designed to call out to other devices. So there's a few more steps you have to use when you use a straight standard MIDI track. We will, if I get time today, I'll show it to you, but more than likely that'll be something we'll cover next week. So essentially we're going to be setting up a MIDI instrument track. And let me just check something real quick while we're doing this. Step 1, using the hotkey Command-Shift-N. So your step 1 is Command-Shift-N. Bless you. As a reminder, we do not have class on Monday because of President's Day. So you guys are off, so I will not see you for another week. Actually, that reminds me, so we're not here Monday. Wednesday, yeah, so I'm so sorry about that, but hopefully we'll get it worked out. But yeah, I actually won't see you Monday because of President's Day. But step 1, Command-Shift-N. Step 2, select a stereo instrument track. Now you're going to make a different number of these based upon however many we're going to set up. When we actually go to do the recording process, I'll show you how many to set up, but based upon your desired number, you can choose it. But you're going to create a stereo instrument track. What you won't create is you won't actually create a stereo MIDI track, again, because it's a different process and it calls to other devices. What they did is they made the instrument track to be something you can internally route and use virtual instruments with, what we're going to do today. The MIDI track is designed to either call to virtual instruments inside of Pro Tools or call to things like third-party plugins through a rewire process like Ableton Live, Reason, Fruity Loops, things like that may connect to Sibelius. And then if we wanted to connect to any hardware, we could actually use MIDI in-out ports to connect to physical synthesizers and things like that. And that's what the MIDI channels are for, or the MIDI tracks are for. So instead, we use instrument tracks. So after you create your instrument track, so let me just show you. So step 1 was Command-Shift-N. Step 2 was create a stereo instrument track. After you create your instrument track, you're going to actually, in your next step, open the view or the mix view window selector here and open instrument. Now this is important because this is where your I/O routing belongs for MIDI. So you're going to go to your mix view selector and open instrument. After you open instrument, in your next step, you just need to confirm that at the very top, where it shows the instrument path, the I/O, this is for MIDI I/O, says all. Okay, as long as it says all, you're in a good spot. Then what you're going to do is in your next step, go to Setup, MIDI, MIDI Input Devices. So Setup, MIDI, MIDI Input Devices. When you click this, what you're hoping to see here are that your USB, if you're using a standard USB connected MIDI device, shows up in this list. If you're using old school, not really old school, but if you're using standard MIDI connectors with a MIDI cable, you need see where it says FCA 1616? There's a MIDI port on the interface. So if you're using standard MIDI plugs, you're going to plug those jacks into the interface, and you're hoping that you see your MIDI input enable device listed as your interface in that instance. In most cases, in the modern day use of USB or MIDI over USB, all of your MIDI controllers are connected via USB. When they're connected via USB, those drivers typically will show up either automatically or you'll have to do some sort of install. And when you do the install and everything's complete, essentially it'll always show up in this list. The question mark is whether or not it's checked to be active. Does that make sense? The reason why it may not be checked to be active is if, let's say you're using a rewire instance where you're running like Reason and Pro Tools at the same time. If you have a MIDI device in Reason and you have a MIDI device in Pro Tools, it'll play both MIDI devices simultaneously. And in most cases, you don't want it to do that. You have to tell each program which device to activate or deactivate. So you actually have to manually go back and forth and say, if I'm not recording into Pro Tools, but I'm recording into another piece of software, I need to deactivate the MIDI here and activate the MIDI there. And then when I switch over, I need to deactivate it there and activate it here. So you're looking for your MIDI input enable to be active. In this case, we're using the MPK261. Port A is the MIDI output. Port B is an additional output. What a lot of the larger format controllers do is they have a USB format that goes to the computer. They also have a MIDI plug in the back, which allows you to connect another MIDI device, and that would be port B. Where it says MIDI remote, the MIDI remote allows you to use all these control surface things, the transport, and all that stuff up on top that you see, those additional elements. And then the the 261 MIDI allows for additional MIDI paths. So there's a bunch of MIDI packed into one device, but essentially the only one that you're going to be using for today's instance will be port A. As long as this is okay, you can hit OK. So in your step, I would write, if your device does not show up, you need to go to MIDI, or set up MIDI Studio. Now the MIDI Studio is a little more complex. I'm not going to give you steps to do it today. I'll just say this: if you guys are setting up brand new devices and they don't show up automatically in your list, you will need to utilize in Pro Tools the MIDI Studio. And you can easily find on the internet the steps to do it, but I'll just show it to you very briefly. Again, this is something that I'm not going to have you necessarily do. This is part of setup configuration. But in the MIDI window, the audio MIDI setup, if we go to the MIDI window, what we see here is we see the devices that exist. Now the images don't match the device, but the devices that exist are the FCA16 and the MPK261. If the MPK261 didn't exist, we would have to hit Add Device. We would double click it, and it's kind of nice because all we have to do is go pick the manufacturer. Let's say we're using a Akai MPC 3000. Essentially, it's going to lock in the information that it uses for that particular brand or model. So you're just going to choose your manufacturer and choose the model, and then you're going to tell it you're going to want it to transmit all channels. And you may say, well, let's use the general MIDI functions. And MIDI machine control is only if you have audio on board or sequencing on board the MIDI device. If you do, you will want MMC because what it'll do is it'll allow the device to be controlled by the computer, which is kind of great when you want to record, like dump a bunch of tracks in. You could push play on or record on the computer and it'll fire off the external device. But in most cases, you don't need that. And then you just hit apply. I'm just going to get rid of this because I don't need it. But you can see this device is already set, and it shows, port availability, things like that. But in your next step, if we go back to Pro Tools, now that you've ensured that your MIDI is set up, go to Options and check that MIDI through is enabled. MIDI through allows the device to record information into Pro Tools, and for Pro Tools to kick it through to internal devices. It's very key to have this activated. Sometimes people deactivate this for certain reasons, and then they realize the MIDI functions don't work at all for some reason. So that has to be enabled. In your next step, you're just going to go to the mix window. So go to your mix window, and you're going to choose out of the inserts bank. See the inserts bank A through E? This is insert A, so insert bank A through E, A, B, C, D, E. Go to insert bank A, go to multi-channel plugin, go to instrument, and for starters, we're going to start by, actually, we'll start by building the boom. You can go ahead and select, and in this step, you're just going to select what we call virtual instruments. So these digital representations of an instrument, we call them virtual instruments. So you're going to choose a virtual instrument out of the instruments list, but you got to go to Bank A on the inserts, multi-channel plugin, instrument, and it's under the instrument tab, and choose boom. questions on that? I know that was a little bit of a jump. Choose boom. Yes, sir.
Mine isn't showing multi-channel.
Oh, go to plugin. Go to plugin. Oh, you know what? Because I think you're in mono. That's why. Because you accidentally created a mono instrument. You need to create a stereo. Yeah, which means again the reason it only shows it because you can only have mono. So I would switch it. And the reason we want to create stereo devices or stereo instruments is so that we can use the stereo field if the virtual instrument is a stereo instrument. Does that make sense? Or to use some sort of, and a lot of them do use panning inside of the device. You'll see it when it comes up. You're going to open the boom. Mine had a warning on it when I first opened it. If yours does, come and wave at me. It just is missing a folder. I think it was like missing where its folder was saved with that. So I'll just tell you how to point it to it, and then once you do that, it'll be fine. Your first step when you open the boom is, so in your next step, choose a drum kit out of the drum kit list down here. You can pick any one you want. In our next step, this becomes this becomes complex, but in our next step, what we have to do is, I'm sorry, this will be the final step in Pro Tools for the moment, is we have to record arm the track. So this is kind of weird, okay? No activity on my MIDI keyboard. If I go up to my MIDI I/O, and I didn't get to explain this just yet because I'm trying to jam through it a bit. When you opened up the instrument view, what this represents is the MIDI I/O, MIDI input output. And we have audio input output. We have a MIDI input output. MIDI, if you had not already taken a course about MIDI, yes, sir. Oh, yeah. So I'll just sit tight. I'll get you when the group goes. The MIDI I/O essentially is the input-output routing of where MIDI comes in and what MIDI gets sent to. The importance of MIDI I/O is if you're playing a track with your keyboard and you have a bunch of MIDI on screen, all that MIDI data needs to know who it's sending that information to so they can play it back. So the real key here is your input needs to be set to all, so it'll just receive every signal, and your output needs to be assigned to the instrument that's listed in the insert. You can easily send it to another channel's instrument once you have more than one, and you will have more than one for today. But essentially, that's something that you have to make sure gets done. After you check your MIDI I/O, we need to essentially, you're going to record enable the track. Once the track is record enabled, essentially now we have access to generating sounds. Oh my. There we go. And of course, the boom is actually, this particular device does two things. One, you can manually cue sounds, or you can actually generate a beat pattern on here. All the beat patterns they have on here are kind of dumb, but but essentially what this is this represents, this device at the bottom represents a step sequencer. And if you haven't worked with step or pattern sequencers, essentially what these do is if let's say I go and highlight the kick. See, if you notice at the bottom it says 1 through 16. What this is it's quarter notes. Quarter note 1, quarter note 2, quarter note 3, quarter note 4, broken into 16th beats. Okay? So essentially this is just a one measure, and it literally goes, and I can solo this so you can see it, it literally goes, oh wait, hold on. Oh, sorry, I have to do it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But it's in 16th, so it's broken into the subdivision. So if I wanted to build a pattern, all I have to do is light up the pattern. If I want to syncopate it, I just have to go through and build the right pattern for the rhythm. Now, there's a 3-click system where the first time it's the loudest, the second time it's a little softer, the next time it's really soft, and then the fourth time it's completely out, so that you can build some sort of dynamic volume variance. So let's add the snare. Now, if I'm going to just click down here on this tab here, most of the time in most beat patterns, you can put the snare on the 5 and the 13 in terms of essentially it's the 2 and the 4 of the measure, But let's say I want to do. You know, and then of course you can add in. Let's see. I don't like these hats. This one. This is just a 16th hat pattern. You can see what they did with the. I'll solo this. Typical 16th hat pattern. They put a 16th notes of hats. They do the whole thing, but instead of letting them be the same volume, they're actually this is the heavier dynamic, and in the in-betweens it's just a little lighter, so it's got that little bit of a kind of flair to it. But when you add it all together, you know, you get the pattern here. Now, again, when you choose the different kits, you get different sounds. Now, the downside to this, so there's a pro and a con. Pro on step sequencers like this, or pattern sequencers like this. Downside is the sequence is not generated in MIDI form. The sequence is generated by some sort of activation key in MIDI. So to activate this pattern in MIDI, all I do is hold one button, right? The problem with that is that if I want to transfer the pattern to another DAW, which happens all the time, and when I'm writing MIDI, I do that all the time, I can't actually steal that pattern's MIDI and take it to another device and have it play that pattern. Does that make sense? Now, some other MIDI devices allow you to take a sequencer like this, export the pattern to the MIDI so you can export that pattern out and use it on other devices. This particular one doesn't, it has a limitation, doesn't have the ability to do that. So what I always suggest on this device is if you know what your pattern is and you like your pattern, you just manually build it in the MIDI sequence so that you can always go to it and use it later. The other benefit is well, what if I want an extra fill here and there? You notice how many measures are represented here? Just one, right? So if I want like a fill on measure 4, I can't really do that with this if it's just looping, right? So instead, I want to manually, map out these patterns. So when you guys set this up, after you do your setup and you get this far, you can go ahead and start screwing around with the way that the keys are set up. In the C3 and C4 are set up to just play the pattern. And if you move on, as you move on from there up to D, E, F, in those ranges, it actually has pre-built patterns that you can select. And what you can do is you can save up to 16 patterns up on the device that you can toggle back and forth between. And you can see the pattern shifts here. This kind of shows you how this works out. It's just a little bit of a 16th note pattern grid. Now we're not going to actually record this way today, but we're going to do our drill 1. I'm going to have you do the setup steps. After you get to the end, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to kind of screw around with the boom. After that, we're going to go and set up an additional device, and then I'm going to teach you how to record with MIDI, okay? So let's go ahead and do this as a drill. Did you miss that whole thing? Okay. You guys can go ahead and start. You're going to get from the setup process all the way down till you have boom, and boom is working appropriately. So yours, did you find it? Did you already? If you open the device, what it says is hold that 1 second. What it says is it can't be found. You can browse, and it actually throws you in there. Go to boom, and just actually hit choose. I think it'll pull it right out of the folder. Yeah, I don't know. I said it was missing. Oh shoot. Okay, so we need to get you some. You have no steps for that. Okay, that's it. Yeah, just hit choose, and it should take you there. Bingo. Yeah. Yeah, if you get to your boom and it doesn't show up, hit browse, choose the boom folder, and then just hit choose at the bottom. I don't know if because it had some sort of, like some computer systems, every time you shut down and reboot, it loses its assignment. Okay, so step 1, how far did you get? Command Shift in? Oh, the instrument track. Set up MIDI input devices. Okay, MIDI I/O, set up MIDI input devices. Okay, so your next step is go to options. So you might just want to write this down real quick, that way you have it. So go to options, ensure that MIDI through is checked. So you're just looking to make sure MIDI through is checked. After you set it up once, please go back and do it again, and then after it's up the second time, you can go ahead and start messing around with boom. I want you to be familiar with this. Make sure they're in stereo. After you set up, okay, so after it's checked, you can go ahead and go to the mix window. You can use Command equals as your hotkey, so Command equals is the tab. So yeah, there you go. And then, so go to mix window, and in your mix view selector, choose instrument. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. So that's the mix view selector, choose instrument.
The file's not.
Okay, so hit browse, okay, and it should take you to something. Yeah, click the boom folder, and then hit choose. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, so yeah, you're just making sure that's set to all. All right, then you're going to go ahead and go to Insert A. Yeah, go to Insert A, multi-channel plugin. You might so Insert A, click again, and there's like click down a little lower. That thing, multi-channel plugin. Go down to Instrument, and then you're going to choose Boom. But before you do it, write that down because you're going to go to Insert A, multi-channel plugin, Instrument, and choose Boom. So for those of you who are already using Boom, all the lower octave keys, I think it's like below C3, are all individual cues, and everything above it is a playback cue or pattern select cue. And the pads aren't established on there yet, so I'm going to show you, Chad, because I think all your pads I think are set to either C3 or C4, so I'm going to show you how to remap them so that you can use them as individual cues. Because right now they're just playing the same thing. Okay, hit browse and choose the boom folder. Bingo. Yeah, and hit choose. Bottom. Okay, so you're active and ready to go there. And your next step, you're just going to confirm that the I/O for the instrument is set to boom on the output. Okay, so just jot that down. You're just confirming that it's the output, the MIDI I/O is set to boom. And then you can record enable. And in your final step, just put record enable. Are you missing instruments on your list? Or what is that? What are you looking at? Those are your plugins, right?
Yeah.
There's instruments on your list?
Yeah, there's only two.
What are they?
Civilians and X-Band 2.
Oh, that's not good. They must have not loaded it. You might end up, oh, some second, but let me see. You might end up needing to switch computers to install. I would jump to another workstation. This one is on. You won't need the interface. You can plug in directly. So, like, let me just get this one. Actually, I'll have you sign in. When you get in over here, you can leave that one on for now. If you have the info. Do you have any file information in there that you needed for today? Okay. Otherwise, you can shut it down. But sorry about that, because you're going to want to have this device so you can kind of get used to it. When you go to that one, just make sure on your playback engine you're going to use built-in output instead of the FCA1616. Or I'm sorry, you know what? The one in the front corner is totally fine. If you want to use that one instead. Yes.
Mine's just playing and I set it up correctly.
It's not playing at all.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't record enable.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah. So your final step is record enable, and you're good to go. You made it right? Do you have audio kicking through? Did you try your keyboard yet? Because that was your last step. As long as you record enabled. It looked like was signal not passing? That's where it's doing stuff. Oh, let me see. Oh, you didn't choose a drum kit. Sorry, I forgot. There was one extra step. In that step, you need to choose a drum kit. Yeah, because when it loads up, it doesn't have anything in it. James, want to put your attention on that? Yeah. Rock and roll. Yeah. Okay. Everybody sign in today? Tell me if you need help. I don't know.
Okay.
You know, I don't want you to get too far behind. Just we have a few. You actually have a few minutes because I wanted you guys to kind of fool around with what you have so far. And as soon as you're set up and you've done it twice, go ahead and build some beat patterns. You're going to have to push play or start. There's a little play button on the boom. You have to push start and then stop. But if you want to build your beat pattern in there, go for it. Did you get there? Did you...
I'm doing the start stuff.
Sorry, just let me know when your boom's up and it's operational.
Okay.
While you guys are fooling around with that, you probably notice that you're at some sort of fixed tempo. If you guys want to adjust your tempo, you actually have to do it to the main tempo sequence. See where it says quarter note equals 120 and that little red triangle at the top? If you guys want to move your pattern faster or slower, if you just double click this triangle, you can actually type in what tempo you want. If you don't know what tempo you want and you want to tap the tempo that you prefer, while the number 120 is highlighted, if you use the T on your keyboard, it'll tap tempo for you. So you just tap it like you're like, I want this pattern or this speed, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just going to give you, if you keep going, it'll give you like an average. A lot of times I watch it and go, oh, well, it looks like I got, out of all of them, I got 135 a lot, 3 times maybe. So maybe 134, 135 will be my choice. And that's how, you could literally just hit return and your BPM will change. And then, of course, your boom tempo changes along with it because it's with MIDI. Good?
No, it's not found for the film.
Oh, okay, yeah. So just hit browse. And then click on the boom folder on the right. So in the right column, keep going right there. You go, yeah. And then hit choose. Wow. It should load.
Okay.
Now, record enable it, make sure it's doing stuff,
Okay.
and then your keyboard's connected, because this will really help. You okay?
Yeah, I don't hear you.
Oh, did you choose? You didn't choose a drum kit yet.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick, guys. So let's switch over to taking some notes real fast. So just jot this down. This is going to be important information. This changes device to device, but what I'm going to show you how to do is to remap your MIDI pads. Okay, so in your notes, type or write remap MIDI pads. Okay, this is specific to the Sakai device, but this is what you would do in any other situation. So you notice, like if you guys were hitting your pads, you may have noticed that initially they were just doing this. And you're like, well, I didn't want to do that. I want to be able to strike and actually hit something. Well, if you went down the octave, you may have noticed down in the C1 through C2 range, if you individually hit these, that one's dead. They're assigned to specific locations on the boom. If you look at the boom, on the boom, it actually tells you some information about that. And let me see here. And it shows like which patterns are assigned to what location. I think if you go here, see if it'll show it. No, maybe it won't. I always thought it highlighted with it. Either way, we'll find the mapping, and this is how we're going to do it. In step 1, on your keyboard, select Bank A on the left. So on the keyboard, select Bank A. After you've selected Bank A, in step 2, strike pad number 1. Just hit it. Okay, so on your physical keyboard, you're just going to hit the pad. Okay? What happens is when you program these, when you edit them note by note, and which is what we're going to do, you have to hit the pad for it to recall the information on screen. In your next step, after you strike pad 1, hit the edit button right below the LCD display. Once you hit edit, you'll see on screen, you'll see that it says pad 1, type note. If it doesn't say type note, use the knob to toggle it to type note. So in your next step, make sure after you hit edit, so your step was edit, after edit, make sure you toggle or rotate that knob until it says note. After you select note, in your next step, you're going to use the arrow keys. You're going to scroll down or tap down on these arrow keys on this keyboard here and tap it until you see the note column blink. So on the LCD, you'll see the note column blink. After the note column blinks, now it's highlighted, you will use the knob to choose which note you want. I want you to assign pad 1 to C2. And then after you do pad 1 to C2, you'll do pad 2 to either, well, you could do pad 2, I think the way that it's auto-assigned. we'll do pad 2 to D2, okay? And then I would like for you to assign pad 3, let's see, to F sharp 2. Now, sometimes you kind of have to, scroll these to figure out what assignment note they need to be. What I'd like, essentially, is for you to have pad 3 on F sharp 2 and pad 4, and the final step here, pad 4 assigned to F sharp 2 as well. And the reason why is that this ends up being a thing that we do quite a bit, is we can actually set this up so that and it's kind of nice. Like when I write string parts, sometimes I want a bowing sound on my strings, or I want to have the feel of it being performed that way. Instead of having it being played on one note, I'll duplicate the note so that I can go back and forth in terms of striking two different objects that make it feel that way. What I did for you guys is I've had you assign kick to pad 1, snare to pad 2, and then hats to pad 3 and 4. So you literally could go a little harder to do when you're on a single pad. It's not as fluid, but if you switch to 2 pads, it's really easy to do. Does that make sense? The other thing we could do, and actually we could do, well, it's kind of a modified thing. I'd rather have you do this and set it up this way so you're good to go and it doesn't take much. And you may have to switch to, let's see if this will work. Yeah. Looks like in most cases what they do is they load the same types of sounds typically to the same locations. After you've done that, we're going to move on to another set of steps. So actually, you know what? Let's just do this for like 2 minutes. You guys should be able to set this up. All you're going to do on your pads is assign those 4 pads, but on your keyboard, switch it to bank A. Hit the first pad, pad number 1. You should see it pop up on screen, and then hit edit. And then you should see it blink information. Make sure before you try to change anything that you scroll so that the blinking part at the top says note. So like if you opened it up and it said aftertouch or something weird, after you hit edit, use the knob to make sure that you move it to note. If it says note, you can use the arrow key to slide down to where it says the note down at the bottom. Once that note is blinking, you can use the knob again to change what note that is. It might help if you keep your headphones on and you actually strike pad 1 while you're changing the note. That way you can ensure that it's being assigned to the correct location. You'll know it because you'll hear just kick. Then when you move on, you'll hear just kick. This one, for some reason. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's on.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it makes sense too.
Yeah. So let me raise your hand if you don't see note blinking when you switched over. I think everybody's pretty much got that right.
You're supposed to hear it when you get the note.
Yeah. Oh, because you have to assign. So you're gonna scroll down, and you have to assign this to C2. Once it's on C2,
Is it after V3?
yeah, it's lower. So it's like it goes in order. So see the lower numbers are on the left, the higher numbers are on the right. So you're gonna go scroll left. Essentially, you're trying to go to the left. Does that make sense?
I go to V3 or C4.
Oh no, it's because it crosses over. Yeah, so scroll counterclockwise until you get to C2. Once you've gone to C2, you don't have to save it. You can move on to the next pad. So once you got the right note, hit pad 2, and you can assign pad 2. Yours worked out? You already did? Are you already done? Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah, so just make sure you assign all 4 of those first 4 pads. After you've done that, let me know because we're going to move into MIDI recording. G2, and I think that it's the last 2. Pad 3 and 4 are F sharp 2. Everybody's rocking this, right? You good with this, right? Jacob? Did you already get through it?
Yeah.
They're assigned, okay. Working out for you? Well, what did you assign that one to? So one's on. Oh, okay, so you still need to go down to C2. So let's see the assignment's blinking. You're going to move it counterclockwise until you find C2. And then you move on to the next. This one should be D2. And then the next two are both going to be F sharp 2. Oh, let's see. The assignments are right. Oh, you're on an audio track. You need to create an instrument track. So do Command Shift N. You can drag and drop. So Command Shift N, make sure it's stereo, and make sure it's an instrument track. Yeah, and then you can actually, after you create it, you can actually drag and drop that one over. It should just let you drag it over, and then it should auto assign. Try it now. Oh, sorry, record enable it. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right, it's nice, right? Everybody so far striking a pad and it's doing the right thing, right? No, nobody's stuck.
I'm just having trouble signing.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So these are good, except this one should be D2. But this is kick, right?
Yeah.
And this one should be snare. It's going to be D2 instead of C sharp 2. So. Yeah.
Okay.
The next ones are both going to be F sharp 2. So strike it. Now, and because it's already on the mode, like it's already blinking in the note range, just assign the next two to F sharp 2. You can just go to the right. So they're on the right. Use that jog wheel knob or whatever. Yeah. Okay. It's actually good. F sharp 2 is pretty close. Okay. So far so good? Did that work for both? So you get both hats on both pads, 3 and 4? Okay. You're, yeah. Oh, it's because it's solo. It's just unsolo it and they'll all be active. Yep, there you go. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. In the next series, we're going to talk about MIDI recording. There's a bunch of ways we can do MIDI recording. I'm going to show you the first way using looping and MIDI merge, okay? So the first series of MIDI recording we're going to do is looping plus MIDI merge, and I'm going to have you manually perform. So what we're going to do are a couple of steps. Step 1, you need to name your track. How do we name our track? You guys remember this, right? You just double-click the track. I want you to name it Boom. That's step 1. So name your track Boom because that's what it is. I mean, you could name it Drums too. I mean, you know what? Scratch that. Just name it Drums. It is the Boom device, but when I'm as a mix engineer, I don't know what Boom is. If I was receiving your files, I would expect it to be called what the instrument actually is, and it's drums. So just call it Drums. Step 1, name your track Drums. Step 2, what you need to do is go to Options and ensure that loop playback is enabled. Step 2, go to Options, ensure that loop playback is enabled. Step 3, go to Options and ensure that loop record is enabled. So we want loop playback enabled and we want loop record enabled. You see it? Loop playback, loop record. So we need both of those options selected. Step 4, open up the go to window, transport. It's command 1, command the number 1 on the keypad, not up top. Go to the transport on window transport or command 1. Open up your transport. We're going to leave our transport open for most of what we do here when we're working with MIDI. Your transport has a menu system like to show you what you can actually see on the transport. So please go to the transport view menu and select all. So the transport view menu and select all, because if you don't, it won't show you MIDI information. So we want to open it up so we can do some of the stuff with MIDI. So go open up your transport, go to the transport view selector and choose all, or the menu selector and choose all. After you've done that, please go to your main counter. You can do it in the edit window, but your main counter, the one that's up here, but the main counter is represented on your transport. It's the same one that you see here. Switch your transport to bars and beats. So change your transport to bars and beats. Why? Because we're going to be doing things in time, right? So you're going to change your transport to bars and beats. After you change your transport to bars and beats, please select, although, shoot, you know what? Let's see. How are we going to do this? Okay, that's right. So what we'll do is, well, actually, what we'll do is we will have to deactivate. I'm sorry, in your notes, just scratch your loop record option because we won't be able to use it. We'll still be able to loop, but we won't actually activate it for this because of the way that we're going to do it. So scratch your loop option. For now, your loop record. You do need loop play. And in your next step, you're going to select this little option here. This is called MIDI merge. MIDI merge basically means that, like, when you record, normally in audio, when you record a pass and then you record another pass over top of it, it literally deletes the pass out of the playlist here, unless you have it set to loop playlist and then it'll throw it to new playlist. In MIDI merge, it would do, or in MIDI, it does the same thing. So if I record new MIDI over old MIDI, it erases the old MIDI. If I select MIDI merge, when I record new MIDI, it just adds it to pre-existing MIDI. So you're actually going to select MIDI merge, and it's this little icon right here. You might want to just draw the symbol. You're going to select MIDI merge. Your next step, you need to change your grid to bar, single measure. Remember, we change when we adjust our grid resolution. So we're going to change our grid resolution to 1 bar. It's done up here in the top. You're going to select it right here, choose 1 bar. After you choose 1 bar, go down and highlight 4 bars for me. Or actually, you know what? Let's start with 1. 4 might be a little too lengthy for you. Let's start with a single bar. Let's just highlight 1 bar. After you've changed your grid resolution to 1 bar, highlight 1 bar with the selector tool. This is what it looks like. You're just going to take your selector tool, highlight 1 bar. What you're going to then do is record arm your track and hit Command Spacebar. So this is how, let me show this to you because that's your last step other than you actually performing. So what I'd like for you to do is build a beat, a 1 bar beat, but because it's going to loop and it's in MIDI merge, it'll keep stacking and adding. So watch how this works. I'm going to hit Command Spacebar. Oh, I'm sorry. 1 major step I forgot. I'm so sorry. 1 final step you'll need. Go to track, create click track, because you guys don't have a metronome, otherwise without it. Track, create click track. What it's going to do is it'll actually make a track that has a plugin already on it as your click. If you open up that plugin in the inserts, I prefer their classic one sucks, so I prefer to use blocks. And I like to do the comp block with no accent, which is why it says ACC, because I prefer to hear all quarter notes without a downbeat accent, so I always switch that. So it just sounds normal, like that. Otherwise, it would sound like this. It's just kind of unnerving when you put the headphones on it, particularly. Anyway, and that's done through the plugin. You don't have to do that. Once you've done that, you're literally just going to hit Command Spacebar. Now here's how this works. So you'll start, your final step, start recording. Okay, Command Spacebar. You set up your first 4 pads. So if I want to put in a beat, I'll start with a kick, right? If you guys don't know anything about this, just give it a whirl. You can't screw it up, okay? So this is what I'm going to do. So now I have my kick. Now I can add my snare. So I did pad 1, I'm going to move to pad 2. Right? And now pads 3 and 4. So that was 3. Let me do 4. And now if I go in and mute my click, Now at this point, because I did it as a loop, notice I was able to quickly throw it in there. I mean, if I was like, yeah, that's cool, I'm going to do this. I'm using Command D, and then there we go. And I can go in, and after the fact, because remember I'm in MIDI merge, after I built my one measure thing, I can go and hit record again and let it roll. And anytime I want to add some sort of fill or some flair, I can just add it. See how I just threw it in there? You kind of see how that went? I just built one measure and I duplicated it and then I let it flow. All I want you to do right now is to do that whole process and do one measure, let it loop record, lay down a kick, lay down a snare, lay down some hats, and then you can hit stop. If you hate it, it's fine. If you love it, it's cool. If you're great at it, awesome. If you're not, it's fine. I'm going to show you how to quantize this stuff so it fits on the grid after the fact. So let's go do that and go through those steps and raise your hands if you have questions. I know it's quite a bit. This might be really new to people, but... Dylan, while you were out, I don't know how much you missed. Let's see, what step did you miss? Okay, and the window transport was your last step? Okay, yeah, so you're going to go to the menu and expand it to all, and then switch your main counter to bars and beats. And we're actually going to go back to options and deselect loop recording for this instance. So unselect it. And select MIDI merge. Is that all in your notes already? MIDI merge? Oh, I see. Yeah. Go to track, create click. Yeah, so you're good. So after that, you're going to create the click. You can start jamming. Sorry about that. Are you at how far did you get? You got MIDI merge up. Oh, so you just need to highlight the one bar? Yeah. Did you switch your grid resolution? You did. Yeah. Dylan, did you already switch your grid resolution? I think after the transport step, there was a step where you go to the grid resolution and change it to one bar. It's up at the top. To the right where it says grid. Yeah, right there. And that little menu is an arrow. And you switch that to one bar. And then after that, highlight with your selector tool just one bar, the first bar of the menu. Make sure you're in grid mode. Sorry, I kind of missed that. If you did not switch to grid mode, please switch to grid mode before you highlight your one bar, or it won't be an actual one bar. Yours is missing. Zoom out. Zoom out by using this left arrow. That arrow right there above it. Right there. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. Oh, there you go. That's fine. You're just that far in, so that's your first bar right there. Yeah, that should, and then just drag it in the lane, in that edit lane. Just drag it right there from the beginning there to the end. Yeah, basically from one bar back. Yep, and then you can go ahead and start hitting Command Space Bar and start doing your recording. If you don't like something, you can hit Command Z. It'll undo. Oh, your spotlight's still kicking on. Yeah, do you remember how to get to it? Yeah, it's System Preferences. And then there's a spotlight tab on there. It's annoying, right? keyboard shortcuts that fall. And deactivate the show spotlight search for command space bar right there. And you can do the one below it too. Okay, cool. You ready to try some recording? You're all ready, right? Don't forget to rename your instrument. Don't forget to rename it to drums or whatever you're going to name it. Go to the mix window. And, oh, it's already up, yeah. So you can just click on the plugin that says click. And then there it is. And you just change these two drop downs to block. Cool, good job, man. Turn it out again.
Yeah.
Did it take anything on the pads? Your hit pad one. Were they working before? Oh, you're plugging. Hold on. Get back to it. Switch to the mix window. We'll see something here. Oh. Go back to options real quick. Is this just playing? Can you hear it now? Let's switch this for you. Yeah, that's weird. It might have been the MIDI keyboard menus. Sometimes they go down. That's not too long. These types of devices are not very stable. Does that right? Alright, you should be able to jam that. Change the mic with your keyboard?
Did you get lost on something? I think so. Like, when I'm trying to record, or I'm trying to like do a whole wire thing.
Oh, because okay, so your grid resolution has to change to one bar. And then zoom in enough so you can see a single bar. So essentially what happens is once you get it tight enough, yeah, so like, yeah, there you go. So now you see that's one bar right there. Highlight that and shoot to it. I think the other thing is, it looks like when you moved when you changed your tempo, the one thing you did is, I think you accidentally might have nudged it. See how there's a gap? If you grab that diamond, pull it all the way left, there you go. Kind of just gets rid of that space. But now you should be fine. And don't forget to name your track drums. Yeah, just don't forget the drums.
And then that one last thing, that bottom, that note at the bottom,
Track. Create pro track.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so make sure you put that in your notes. And now you have something to play to. Okay. Click track standpoint.
When I'm trying to record, it's going past the one bar.
Oh, you know you have it highlighted?
Yeah.
Highlight it again. Oh, hold on. Something's deselected on your device. Let me see. It's the top of your window should look like this, with these three items selected. It changes how the transport or the edit function works in the sequence.
Okay, it's fine.
You back on track? And then if you want to change it, go about that in the mix window. If you want to change the click information in the mix window, don't single click the click. And then this is where I change the Yeah, so I would do a command space bar, start tracking, start adding in your. Is it all working?
Yeah, no, that's working. I'm just looking up the spotlight.
Oh, shit. Chad, you're doing good, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool part about this, especially since I know you're using another GAW, is when you're done, you can do, you can do as many beats or whatever patterns as you want. You can go to File, Export MIDI, and export the MIDI file, and like transfer it to yourself or email it to yourself because it's a real small file, and then you can dump it into Logic or import. You know what I mean? You can import it into something else after you build your MIDI patterns. That's what I do. Sometimes, like, I don't like the sounds on this necessarily, so sometimes if I'm in it and I'm just trying to do something quickly, I'll just build it here and then bring it into something else later. So, it's a good way to do it. Plus, if you're not, I would also suggest, since you're making a lot of music, you're doing a lot of MIDI stuff, export your MIDI and archive it. So that, because like for me, I have stuff that I did like 10 years ago, and I just archived it at the MIDI. It's not things that I can open up now because it's all outdated software.
Yeah.
It's like once you update your computer, you can't go back to the way you had things if you had something before. And then that way in the future, you can always just take that pattern and use it for something else. So that'd be a good thing for your catalog.
Yeah.
Doing good? That was good. I'm happy with that. Okay. All right. So hopefully everybody's got a beat set up, something done, right? Okay. I want to talk quickly about editing, and then I want to add an extra track for you guys to do some stuff with. We'll pick up on more of this next week when I see you. Again, we don't have class on Monday because of the holiday, so I won't see you again until Wednesday. But pretty cool stuff, right? So in our next phase, we're going to do two things. I'm going to show you where you can gain access to manually editing your MIDI in the MIDI edit window, as they call it. There's two ways to do it. You could go to Window and actually go to MIDI editor, or you can actually, if you choose the grabber tool, you could just double click on the MIDI and it throws you into the MIDI editor so you can actually see every piece of MIDI piece by piece, which is cool because then you can see it against the grid. And let me just zoom in a little bit tighter. If you're looking at it against the grid, it allows you the ability to go, oh, look how far off the grid I was on this beat. Let me just fix that. Bam, right? Or if you're like, oh, I didn't like this note, let me play this one instead, right? Or maybe I want to copy, paste, or Command D, right? To duplicate that. I'm going to undo that so I don't have extra stuff in there. But that idea in mind, there's a lot that you can do with these kinds of things. Also down below, you see velocity. So if you wanted to change, I'm just going to use my pencil tool. If you wanted to change how hard you hit these things, actually, pencil tools not working. Or you could actually select all. A lot of times we do that for like fills and stuff. You're going to change your velocity curves for fills so that like the fills build instead of just being so static. There's a lot of work to be done in that range, but you could do a lot of this stuff in the MIDI editor. In addition to this, though, one of the fastest ways to get through editing, which is what I'm going to show you, is the quantize operation. So in your notes, put quantize MIDI, heading, quantize MIDI. Actually, we won't have time because it's already 11:08 to add another track because I really want to. Make sure you save this because I want to come back to this next week. And what we'll do is, actually, I'll show you that export MIDI. So I'll show you how to import MIDI on that next when we get back, so you can do that. To quantize audio or quantize MIDI, all you have to do is click the MIDI clip. So I would like for you to click. If you guys did duplications like I did, just do a triple click so all the clips are highlighted. Or if you just did a single one, just single click or double click that one range so that that is highlighted. A lot of times you want to quantize it before you duplicate it, but I'm just going to do mine as a group. So once it's highlighted, you're just going to go to Event Operations, Quantize. In your next step, Event Operations, Quantize. What quantizing will do is it'll force these beats that are just slightly off to the nearest grid line. We're going to tell it at what resolution because it'll shift how the performance gets played. But notice, I'm going to open this up. It gives me the options here to do a couple things. For now, I'm just going to leave it as note on, preserve note duration. The big thing you have to look for, there's a bunch of stuff down here you can that for advanced users you can set up. It's just a matter of what resolution you want it to quantize at. So if I wanted my MIDI to quantize at 8th note or 16th note, I might have to change that. Now what I always suggest, before you actually activate quantizing, duplicate the playlist. Remember on one day on the playlist, we made new playlist, new playlist, new playlist. There's another option on that menu right beside the nameplate that is duplicate. What that does is it duplicates the original playlist. Now the reason you might want to do that is, and you can just leave the name as .01, is to preserve your original performance in case your quantizing doesn't sound very good. That's what I like to do a lot of times. Before I do hard edits, I'll always do a duplicate so I always have that playlist backup. So all you have to do is go to the playlist selector and hit duplicate. After that, you're going to choose your quantize resolution and go ahead and hit apply. For now, 16th note is a safe bet. If you wanted it to be really straight, you could go to quarter note or 8th note. But watch what happens. I'm going to move mine to quarter note. You'll see it. You saw everybody shift? Listen to my pattern now. My pattern, this was my pattern before. But because I switched it to quarter note, it's going to shift everybody so that they fall on a quarter note value of the grid. So this is what 8th note would sound like. But I did have 16ths in mind, so I'm going to want to have mine be 16. I want you to real quickly go through those steps and quantize your performance, but make sure you duplicate your playlist. We doing good? Everybody able to quantize their performance? I'm going to audition it to make sure it's good. Okay, so here's what happens. Just because of what I'd like to do on next Wednesday, I would like for you guys to export your MIDI file as a MIDI .mid. What that's going to do is it's going to take that MIDI information and export it as a file that we can interchange between different DAWs. And what we'll do on next Wednesday is we'll make a class 10 session. I'll have you import the performance that you have. Does that make sense? So make sure it's quantized first. You can go ahead and hit save by hitting Command S. And please write this in your notes. You're going to go to File, Export, MIDI. So this is exporting MIDI. You're just going to go to File, Export, MIDI. Pretty simple. File, Export, MIDI. At which point in your next step, so you do File, Export, MIDI. In your next step, it's going to ask you how you want it set up. Notice it says the options here. MIDI file format, multi-track or single track. Now here's how this works and here's what this does. If you were to, let's say we had 10 tracks of MIDI. If we do multi-track, it'll literally export as 10 tracks of MIDI. So when we put it into a new DAW, it'll export as 10 individual tracks of MIDI. But let's say instead of the way I had you guys do this in MIDI merge, I had you guys do a separate MIDI track for kick, separate MIDI track for snare, separate MIDI track for hats. But I wanted it all dumbed down to one singular file in the MIDI. Then you could use this single track option, and what it does is it'll take all MIDI in the session and it'll bring it down to one MIDI file. And when you import it, it'll be like the one that we have here, where it just has a bunch of MIDI information in it all together. Can be beneficial under certain circumstances, easy to consolidate, but in most cases you want to leave it as a multi-track. So all you're going to do is leave it as a multi-track, leave apply real-time properties selected, and hit OK. And in your final step, you just need to choose a location to save it. You guys are going to want to save it inside of your session folder so you can have it. Notice it's trying to dump it by default in somebody else's session here. Actually, it's my session, but it's from a different class. What I prefer for you to do is when you choose your location, I would place it in the folder that has your name on it, so the data drive, your name, put it under class 9 at the top level, so just under the class 9 subfolder, so that you can easily pluck it out. You will then need to title it, and you can title it whatever you want. I'm just going to call mine class 9 MIDI. And then you can hit save or OK, whatever it says here, and then you're done. Okay? Please save your session before you do this. Go ahead and get that procedure orchestrated, and then you'll be good to go. Once you're done, you are dismissed.